All right, hey nerds. So, I'm gonna do another video talking about a short from YouTube philosopher Alex O'Connor. This is obviously a clip from his debate with Ben Shapiro, who's the really high pitched voice, fast talking conservative YouTube pundit, and they're arguing about free will, which is interesting. And basically, Alex O'Connor makes a very brilliant takedown of free will. I personally, on the issue of free will, I'm not convinced by determinism that there is no free will. I'm not convinced that there actually is totally free will. I'm not convinced by compatibilism that we have free will, but everything is determined. Everything is also determined, but we can make choices, which seems like a cop out to me, along with other philosophers. But anyway, this, regardless of all of the rest of that, and whether this is actually the opinion that you should adopt, that there is no free will, everything is determined, compatibilism is stupid. You can believe whatever you want to, but this is a good criticism of it.
The argument against free will, in my view, we can build an argument, I think, from a law of logic, the proposition that P must either be true or false, and it can't be both, it can't be neither. We can simply ask a question of any kind of mental activity. Is it determined or is it not? That is it determined by anything else, or is it completely undetermined by anything? If it's undetermined by anything, then it's random, and you're by definition not in control of that which is random. If it's determined by something, then it's either determined by something further inside your mind, or it's determined by something external to your brain. If it's determined by something external to yourself, if that's what's determining the action, then clearly you're not in ultimate control of that action. If it's something inside of yourself somewhere, then
If it's something external that is determining your actions, like, you know, all of the inevitable random factors, random unpredictable factors of the universe that lead to every seeming decision that you make, or like God making things happen, then you could say then that's not compatible with the idea of free will.
then all you do is push the problem back and you ask the question again, is that thing determined or is it indeterminate? Either of which you are completely out of control of. If you say that it terminates in something like a soul, people like to do this. They say, well, look, with a religious philosophy, we have the benefit of introducing a soul. That doesn't solve anything. It's not a matter of having to explain the mechanism by which the soul brings about actions. That may well be a mystery. But if it is the case that whatever it is that's doing that is either determined or it's not, and that if it's not, it's random and therefore out of your control, and that if it is, it ultimately terminates in something outside of yourself or something random, and both of which are out of your control, free will cannot exist. The argument against free will.
That's a really good argument. So, like, it can't exist because even if you're talking about the idea of a soul, and you're going to go to some sort of afterlife after you die, your soul dies. They're interesting different perspectives on souls. Like some ancient Greek philosophers, I think it was Socrates, maybe Aristotle too, who thought that when you die, the body dies, but the soul lives on, which is interesting. But yeah, anyway, even if you're like you the what happens to your soul after you die is predetermined, then what's the point of this whole thing? Like if you believe in an afterlife, like heaven and hell, if we're talking about traditional Christianity anyway, and that, like, if that's the case, then it's predetermined either way, whether we're talking about God or like random factors of the universe. And I'm gonna go back and go through the last part of this argument piece by piece, because it's very well connected.
By which the soul brings about actions, that may well be a mystery. But if it is, that doesn't solve anything. It's not a matter of having to explain the mechanism by which the soul brings about actions. That may well be a mystery. But if it is the case that,
so it's nothing to do with how the soul allows us to commit actions, even if they're predetermined and they're not actually choices. It's not about that.
whatever it is that's doing that is either determined or it's not, and that if it's not,
So whatever causes what happens to us, whether it's determined or indetermined, regardless of what it is, it's either determined or indetermined. It can't be neither. So he's not leaving the door open for compatibilism, which is fine with me.
it's not, it's random and therefore out of your control. And that if
it's not determined, it's random. Well, that's not really necessarily the case. It doesn't have to be either random or determined, because if you're talking about free will, then it's neither random or determined. But he's saying that this is criticism of free will, but that's just really talking about the framing of the argument and the position. They're not really criticism.
that if it is, it ultimately terminates in something outside of yourself or something random, and both of which.
Yeah, something outside of yourself or something random that cause what happens in you in life to be determined. Either way, that doesn't leave any room for free will. And like I'll let him finish his argument here.
both of which are out of your control. Free will cannot exist. The argument.
Yeah, so by that logic, free will cannot exist because whatever happens to the soul is after you die is predetermined. But I mean, I'm sure, but like obviously I'm exaggerating by saying that he rendered Ben Shapiro speechless with that, but that is a good takedown. However, it also depends on your perspective too. Again, he's not even mentioning compatibilism, and I know that he's aware of the concept of compatibilism, this whole free will versus determinism argument. But if you're just looking at it as what I would say is sort of a false dichotomy in terms of determinism versus free will, then yes, if they're in terms of the way you are framing the argument, if if what happens to us in life and in death it is either determined by some external force or some internal force, like some inner psychological force based on how we interact with the world and how that influences our actions, or like the external causes of the universe or a god or something, those make all of our actions predetermined by those forces, which makes free will impossible by that logic. However, like I said, he's presenting the argument as a binary, and I definitely agree that there are like really excellent criticisms of the concept of free will. Although I think basically Alex O'Connor and Sam Harris, when they talk about it, are too extreme on it. And like I said, to me, I'm not convinced by determinism, free will, or compatibilism. I think they're all fundamentally flawed. So let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think that we have free will? Do you think that everything is predetermined? Are you a compatibilist? Compatibilism is stupid, in my opinion, but I mean, it's not any less stupid than determinism or free will, in my opinion. So let me know what you think in the comments. Are you a determinist? Are you compatibilist? Or do you believe in free will? Adios until next time, nerds.